Good evening, and welcome to IDSL 895 Educational News, the station that brings you up to date on educational issues at the local, state, and national level. I'm Mary Yancho.
And I'm Tanya McFadden.
And we are your hosts for this evening's program. In local news, during winter semester 2012, the Higher Learning Commission determined that Math 110, beginning algebra, would no longer be sufficient for an associate's degree at MCC, effective this July. MCC had to comply or lose accreditation, so the change was announced in the middle of winter semester. This would hopefully give students enough notice to complete Math 110 in spring, thus allowing them to fall under the old math requirements for graduation. Students under the old guidelines follow a sequence of Math 021 and then Math 110, if placement test results deemed 021 necessary. Under the new guidelines, students must complete Math 120, intermediate algebra, to meet graduation requirements or test out by placing into Math 120 or higher on the placement test. This change necessitated the replacement of Math 110 with either Math 072 or 082 to be determined by final grades in Math 021. It is too soon to determine the impact this HLC ruling will have, but one rather obvious change is that now many MCC students will find themselves forced to take 2 remedial math courses, a total of 9 credits, that will no longer count toward graduation. Advocates of the initiative point out the need to increase and improve math proficiency at the college level nationwide. However, there are many opponents to the plan who question whether requiring higher algebra proficiency is a practical skill set for the average American and the current job market. Additionally, critics point out the dichotomy between the Obama administration, which is trying to increase the number of college graduates nationwide, and the HLC, who by requiring this higher level of math proficiency is making the attainment of a college degree impossible for a great many students who are simply not capable of completing the new higher math requirements. Over to you, Tanya.
Thank you, Mary. In state and local news, since the economic collapse of 2008, colleges have been forced to do more with less. Declining revenues from property taxes, coupled with waning state appropriations, have forced community college leaders to make changes in the way college business is handled. For example, between 2010 and 2011, OCC lost nearly $8 million in property taxes and another $50,000 of state appropriations. The Board of Trustees at OCC, as well as other colleges in the region, have been forced to raise tuition and fees to offset budget shortfalls. OCC vehemently tried to stave off a tuition hike, but was sadly forced to raise tuition in 2012 by 7%. No program or department within OCC is safe from cutbacks. The business managers at each campus have drastically slashed departmental budgets to the extent that essential programs and services may be forced to close in the very near future. Over to you, Mary.
As I'm sure most of you are aware by now, in 2011, the Michigan legislature signed PA 152, a public act mandating that all Michigan public employees begin sharing in the cost of health insurance premiums beginning January 1st. This bill was strongly opposed by the Michigan Education Association, but the fight to keep it from being signed into law was in vain. This has wreaked havoc amongst community colleges statewide, whose members now find themselves returning to the bargaining table to come to an accord as to the terms and conditions of the new state mandates. At Mott Community College, faculty who are in the second year of a three-year contract have spent an exorbitant amount of hours figuring out where costs can be contained or modified, and how best to deal with the economic hit to their paychecks. The other campus groups are affected as well, but several of them are already negotiating new contracts, so we're a bit more prepared to incorporate the necessary changes. HSAs, FSAs, front-loading. These are all terms that did not exist 15 years ago, but with the economic decline in Michigan, it could appear that the legislature is trying to balance a budget on the backs of its teachers and associated school employees. And on an even more somber note, it does not seem that education has seen the last of the proposed cuts by the powers that be in Lansing. Tanya?
Thank you, Mary. In national news, the shooting of Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords in January 2011 sparked administrative leaders at OCC to take action in support of assisting students with behavioral issues. Shortly after the Arizona shooting, OCC developed a system termed BART, which stands for the Behavioral Assessment Review Team, which evaluates and handles complaints from staff, faculty, and students regarding behavioral issues within the student body. In many instances, behavioral issues happen as a result of mental instability or other factors in life that trigger anger and rage within students. Oftentimes, when these situations occur, students do not feel as though they have an outlet. So the BART team was designed to work in conjunction with our Access Office, where specially trained counselors are on hand to help students work through issues of mental illness or other matters that may cause students to act out. Since implementation in 2011, BART has dealt with nearly 100 student behavioral related problems. One representative of Pima Community College, where Jarrett Loeffner, the shooter of Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords, attended school, noted that Loeffner's repeated behavioral issues at the college earned him an expulsion, with a caveat that he could return pending a mental health clearance from a professional. Loeffner never received the mental health screening, and shortly after his expulsion went on to shoot Giffords and 18 other people, fatally wounding 6. Many believe that had Loeffner received the mental health evaluation, that the shooting would not have occurred. OCC firmly believes that students deserve every chance to succeed and has set systems in place through BART that will not allow students to walk out of the door to seek their own mental health clearance, but instead will work with the student to arrange for them to speak to specially trained licensed counselors on staff or to receive help from outside social workers and/or counselors. Over to you, Mary.
Approximately 1.5 years ago, the Higher Learning Commission announced that remedial or developmental courses would no longer be allowed to count toward graduation requirements. This announcement met with many different reactions. Many Mott Community College students were angered when classes they had been told would count toward graduation were removed from the final credit count, causing a graduation delay of a semester or more. Many of these students had initially been resistant to these courses, but were mollified by the knowledge that they weren't wasting their time since the courses counted toward graduation. Advisors were also unhappy since it now appeared that they had lied to their advisees in order to fill these developmental classes. Faculty remarked that without the developmental coursework, many of their students were lacking the basic necessary skills to ensure classroom success. To counteract, in part, the resistance against developmental course attendance, mandatory developmental course placement has been initiated across a majority of institutions nationwide, which has helped to mitigate the reluctance and resistance on the students' part. If it is required, they will do it with less grumbling. If it is recommended, it can be extremely difficult or even impossible to convince students to take these courses. Assurances that these developmental classes are not about college but about life skills unfortunately fall too often on deaf ears. Was this change positive or negative in its impact? If a student entering a community college with a 6th grade reading comprehension leaves with an 11th grade or higher comprehension, or if a student who places into English 095 sentence construction is able to complete English 101 or 102, we have helped that student gain skills that will carry him or her through the rest of their life. That can be nothing but positive.
Thank you, Mary. In national news, administrators at OCC have recently revised financial aid policies due to financial aid abuse by students. Under the former method, students applied for financial aid, registered for classes, and paid once the monies were dispersed. However, many of those students never attended one class, or they would drop the class shortly after the start of the semester. Conversely, some students were not working towards a certificate or degree and were just taking random courses to qualify for financial aid. These problems became increasingly worse after the economy collapsed in 2008 and the college saw record enrollment of 77,000 students, with 60% of those students receiving financial aid. In 2010, college officials received word from the federal government that students from OCC were defaulting on their student loans at an alarming rate, and that the college would be responsible for returning nearly $1 million of financial aid monies awarded to OCC students. government officials advised college administrators to develop a better plan for encouraging students who are receiving financial aid to enroll and finish classes and programs. So in late 2011, the college developed a new policy and formula for financial aid eligibility with much tighter standards and guidelines. Now students must be working towards a degree or certificate to receive financial aid and cannot exceed 150% of the published length of their specified program. These students are not considered to be making progress and are subsequently ruled ineligible for financial aid. Additionally, students must have completed with a passing grade 67% of all OCC credits attempted and must have an overall GPA of 2.0. Students formally proven to have abused the system are ineligible for financial aid or may be forced to pay for the course out of pocket first and be reimbursed through financial aid at a later time once a passing grade is obtained. In some instances, financial aid for these students may be reinstated when they have taken enough credits to meet eligibility requirements. That is the news for now. I am Tanya McFadden.
I'm Mary Yancho.
With the news from the Educational Beat. Have a good evening, everyone.